Hello, everybody. Welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today is Tuesday, the 4th of February, 2020. Looks like the volume was a little bit loud on that. And welcome in. That's the latest new intro my sister has made. I can't get enough of these intros. Every show should be a new intro. You never know what to expect here. Okay. I don't think that's going to happen. But we're just trying to keep it fresh anyway. Welcome in, everybody. Hello. And thank you for joining me today. I got nothing done last night with regards to finishing up Valentine's computer. And I had two choices. One was to start it now off camera, or the second was to just let you join me as I run through some basic cable management. And I thought, well, what the heck? Well, I'll just hang out and watch the final work done that I normally don't like to show. Why not? Do something a little different. Tony Wallow has contributed $1.99. Hey, thank you to Tony. Also, I had a letter in the mail today. Again, old school, print it out, stick it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and mail it. This comes from Glenn Johnson. He goes, Carrie, Dr. Holzman. Doctor. Yeah. Don't call me that. Someone will be like, is there a doctor here? Yeah, no, I'm a computer guy. He says, good day to you. I hope you and your family are well and having a great week. Thank you. Again, I want to thank you for inviting us all into your shop. Well, it's my kitchen, but it's sort of my shop now. This is a small donation of $60. Wish I could donate more because your show is worth it. That's from Glenn Johnson, and he sent $60. Look at that. Hey, Glenn, thank you so much. I'm going to make sure that a case badge and some stickers go out to you, too. So I appreciate your support, and you guys, even just the effort it takes to write a letter and mail it is really, really appreciated. And I'll be sure that that this will go towards the channel, of course. And Ken, sorry, I can't remember Ken's last name. He may not want me to say his last name. Ken contributed $60 for a Corsair 200R case to use with the motherboard that there's a CPU that was sent by Michael, a motherboard sent by Ryan, RAM also sent by Michael, but Michael also sent a Blu-ray drive and a kind of a heavy, Be Quiet PureBase 600 to use as a giveaway. And my issue with that, it's a big heavy case and they cost more money to ship. And so Ken said, here, buy a 200R for that giveaway because those are light. And this is the beauty of the community. Instead of like one person doing everything, each person contributing a little piece, and it's just amazing. And I'm going to have to get to some of those giveaways here pretty soon because I'm starting to get backed up with some computers and parts that need to go out so I can make room for more computers and parts. But thank you, Glenn, and thanks to all of you who have contributed. I've been really bad on getting emails, thank you emails out to people. I'm about 2 weeks behind on that. I started to do it today, and you guys have to understand if it's an Amazon gift card, it's super easy to send the thank you. When it's through PayPal, I have to log into PayPal with two-factor authentication. I've got to search for your name, and then I've got to look up the details of your transaction so I can find your email address, because PayPal does not include your email address by default when I get an email notification that a contribution's been made. And that's not a problem when there was just, a half dozen contributions being made. But in fact, there's probably only a half dozen a day at this point. But after 5 or 6 days, that's 30, 40 emails I've got to look up manually and send responses to. So please don't get discouraged. I am working on sending them out. And for some reason, some people's if you have an email address through your internet service provider, there's a good chance that my email gets blocked by your service provider, and I'm going to have to call GoDaddy and talk to them about it. But I'll have to log in. So what happens is the email kicks back to me, and then I have to send it again through my Gmail account. So it's a lot of effort just to say thank you. But anybody who's got a Gmail account, it's not a problem. It's just people that have an ISP email. And there's a lot of reasons why you should not have an email from your ISP. First of all, they already know enough about you, I think we agree. But most importantly is that when you change ISPs, whether you move or you decide to go with a different provider, you will lose that email address forever. It's gone. So if you have a Gmail address, you can keep that for life, and you can move around, change internet service providers, whatever you want to do. And furthermore, you can be anywhere in the world using a public computer somewhere or a friend's computer to log in and check your email from anywhere in the world, whether you're on a cruise ship or visiting a friend in another state or another country, which you may not be able to do, or certainly wouldn't be as easy with your internet service provider. And setting up a Gmail account is super easy. Of course, there's other free email accounts. Gmail's the most popular one, but going to a free web-based email is so much more helpful to people in that, like I said, you can have the email address for the rest of your life. You don't have to worry about losing it. And whether or not you choose to go to like a free Hotmail account or a free Outlook.com account or a free Rocket Mail, I mean, there's a bunch of them. I only say Gmail because it's so common. I also know that a lot of people don't get their YouTube notifications, and they are also, most of them, not Gmail users. Keep in mind that Google owns Gmail and Google owns YouTube, and so these platforms work really well together. Your ISP, just as it's been blocking my email address suddenly, may be blocking those emails from YouTube as well. So it solves numerous problems and it costs you zero. So try it out. If you don't have a Gmail account, make one. And if you don't like it, then you don't have to use it. It's a little different. It takes a little getting used to, but it's completely free. And you know, finding an email address is getting harder and harder. And the more people jump on Gmail, the more email addresses that they have to come up with. The sooner you get one, the more likely, I should say, the easier it is going to be now to find an open email address that isn't already being used by somebody than it will be tomorrow or next week. It's only going to get, they're just adding on more and more and more every day. So the longer you wait, it's going to be harder and harder for you to come up with an email address that somebody else has not already taken due to its popularity. So, and it's free. So anyway, thank you again to all the contributors. And speaking of which, there is a contribution that just came in from Ben Stroud for $2. He says, "Good afternoon. I am so proud of our chief." So right on. Ben is apparently from Missouri. And Brendan Looney's contributed £2. Hey, thank you, Brendan. Donnie Seegers contributed $1.99. Alan Wimp has contributed £2. He says, "Have a Coke on me, Carrie." Right on, Alan. Where's my Coke? Speak of it, and it shall be. Cheers, Alan. Jesse says, "That's a great intro. Love them." I agree. Linda's doing a fantastic job. Yeah, she's probably chomping at the bit to get her hands on that 3950X. She's probably like, if she was here, she'd be kicking me in the ass. Get off the couch. You got work to do. David Kane has contributed $2. He says, "I just built my wife an all-white build." Yeah, the white computers, a little harder to find matching peripherals and things. It's more of an apple color. But hey, to each their own, and the fact that you built it yourself that's the whole point of it, right? Going to the store and trying to find one already pre-built in white would be far more difficult than just doing it yourself. So well done. Well done. Please do not post your email address in the chat room. It's a public chat that's recorded for playback, and anybody can grab it. Spammers can grab it. People with nothing else better to do than harass you can grab it. So please do not post your email address publicly. Thank you, Jesse, for removing that. Bill Leatherman joins us all the way there from England. Welcome in, Bill, a good friend of the channel. Geo Johnson in stealth mode, and Gary Tatum, and Jesse Kirk, who I just mentioned there. Robert Cronin, Jim Kenny, Dimitri, Tina McLaughlin, Jazz Sinclair, Darren Gilholm, and Bill Carter, and Kevin McDonald, and Cosmo, Scott Hallinan, Dave Murray joining us from Bonnie, Scotland, Vern Mahorny, and Mats Olaf Rickardsson, Bear Paw, and Luke Greenia. Always a pleasure seeing all my friends in blue here. Ryan Grady and Joseph Neal, William Dawson, Reverend John O'Toole. Hey, John, you got to give me a call, man. You and I have to talk so we can figure out what this network problem is you're having, and I need to connect to you remotely so I can see it. I imagine it'll be something pretty simple once I can see it. He seems to be stuck on an issue with being able to browse his network that the Netfix tool did not use. Speaking of the Netfix tool, the sale is off on that now, so it's back at regular price. It was sort of an introductory price. Thank you to everybody who purchased it, and I think what we'll do is we'll put the optimizer back on sale soon, like hopefully within a day or two. It's usually 10 bucks. We'll do like 30% off till the end of the month for 7 bucks, but we haven't done it yet. I'm talking with Nick over at D7X Tech to see if we can get that discount applied and offer it to people who've not yet had an opportunity to get the Windows Optimizer tool. And keep in mind, this is all to support the channel. I just hate the idea of me not giving back to people who are contributing. So this way you get something back. You know, it's more like a purchase than it is. It's really a contribution, but I suppose technically it's a purchase. But it's a neat little tool. It certainly won't hurt you to have it and use it. Whether or not you notice any benefit kind of depends on how old and how modern your computer is. I run it on every system I build, and it was something I was doing by hand, and it was time consuming, and sometimes I'd forget a step or I'd get distracted in the middle of it. So this is so much faster. I hit one button, all the changes that I like to make are done with consistency, and I reboot and it's all good to go. So I love it. I mean, that's just me. But and you can run it on any number of computers you want. I just only ask you not to give it away to people. You know, let them contribute to the channel, help this channel grow. But you can run it on a million computers for all I care. Gary Tatum has contributed $10. He says, I can't wait to see the Xenos build when completed. Yeah, the Xenos build, I talked with John Xenos, and he said everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. I had some concerns about fitting the top on, and he assured me that I was doing it wrong. But John and I have been speaking now for about 4 years about this, and he had mentioned something in a previous email a couple of months ago about what I have to do to fit that. And I just forgot. So when I get back to the Xenos build, which will be after these other builds I've got to get done, I will show that whole process. It's very different. It's very unique. And so far, everything, John watched the video, and he's like, you know, everything's looking good on his side. He doesn't see any issue other than me not doing it right, which is fine. And that's to be expected when we're working with such a different platform here. But we will get back to that, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I need to start by getting poor old Valentine's machine done, because I'm sure he's eager for it. What's a Xenos? This blue computer right here, this is the Xenos G3. And you can go to xynos.com. And you can see the case available in different colors. It's a custom-made, all billet aluminum, engraved, carved. It's carved, basically. It's a carved-out case. Each piece is carved. It's done by a CNC machine. And there's a lot of precision involved for everything to fit properly, and then it's anodized, which is really, really cool. So in any event, yeah, we're going to get back to that just as soon as I can, but customers have to come first before my own personal projects. And so for that, we're going to get back here over to Xenos. Okay, so let's see, what am I doing? I need to do some cable management here, and I think I'm going to start by just wrapping the front port umbilicals. What I like to do with those is to grab a bunch of 4-inch nylon zip ties, and I'll place one of these about every 3 or 4 inches along the cable. And I like to do that with all of the strands of cables. And then those all become basically one cable made up, like in this case, it'll be 4 cables, and they'll be made up of basically just one. And then when I flip this around the other way, like these 2 cables, I like to keep these tied together. And then once this bundle is tied and this bundle is tied, then I can tie them together. And then that works on working on the machine then becomes a lot easier for any upgrades or repairs in the future down the line. And like this cable here, this is the 8-pin power for the motherboard. I like to just also use these little 4-inch cables. You know, the length of the cable doesn't really, rather the nylon zip tie, the length of the nylon zip tie really doesn't matter. I could certainly use longer ones, but it's just kind of a waste. And generally, the bigger they are, the more expensive they are. So I tend to use the littler, cheaper nylon zip ties where I can get away with, not wasting any money, right? And they're also thinner and they're harder to see, whereas the larger nylon zip ties are sort of, certainly more in your face, bolder, harder to hide. Not that it's a terrible look. So what I'm trying to do right now is I'll just get one started. And generally I don't tighten these down right away. What I'll do is get it started around the cable and bring it down pretty close to being tight, but not quite, so I can still move the cable. Make sure that I take all the slack out as much as possible. And then there's another little loop right here, or a little bridge for another zip tie. And it's probably overkill to use this many of them, to be honest, because then there's another one right down here that I can reach. But in general, I will use 3 of the 4-inch zip ties on a Corsair 200R, just as I'm showing you right now, to hook up that 8-pin CPU power cable and to keep it tight to the inside there of the motherboard tray. And not only is it a cleaner look, but it also makes putting the side panel on a lot easier, which, depending on the configuration, sometimes can be a bit of a challenge on the 200R. And you see with that 4-inch tie, it's just a little bit tight. So rather than struggle with it, we've got some that are slightly longer. I think these came with the case or with a power supply. And that's going to give me a little bit more room to reach without the struggle, but I have to put it on in the right direction. That's the other issue, of course, is putting these on backwards, and then you realize when you go to plug it in, you're like, whoops, gonna do that again. There we go. Did I do it again? It's got to go this way. Thought it'd be easier if I grabbed the longer one. Seems like I would have been done by now if I just stayed with the smaller one. Okay. So now what I can do is kind of pull the slack there and then tie it up, pull on these. And you know what? These don't even have to be super tight either. It's not really a concern that the cable's going to move. It's, left or right. It's that we don't want it to just bow out and to interfere with putting the cover on. So you don't have to tighten these super tight. when you do put them on real tight, it can make them difficult to cut off. And you don't want to cut through your power cables. You don't want to cut through any of your cables. And that's the danger in removing these. You've got to be very, very cautious when you take them off to not cut through the cable. And Marty Wells contributed $10. He says, hello, Carrie and chat. Hey, thank you, Marty. Welcome in. Big K Basha says, I know you're busy, Carrie. I just want to say thank you for your videos. It made me want to build a computer, and I built it. Right on. Callum Patterson's, Carrie, I enjoy watching your videos. I've watched your videos from the start, and you have inspired me to repair laptop and desktop computers. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Larry says, Carrie, I got my old Acer working again by following your directions. Well done. This is what I'm talking about, putting the power back in your hands. Speaking of that, how about a new intro? See? Power's in your hands. All right, so just to get that one out of the way, and then I also want to hook up this front case fan, which I'll do now. And then I'll take the time now to just take the twists out of the cable so it's nice and straight, because it's a lot easier to fold it for the nylon zip tie when the cable's not twisted. I think a lot of people don't realize when a cable is rolled up, and look, bear with me guys, because not everybody knows this. When you're rolling a cable, like if you see me roll this cable, you have to understand that you have to twist the cable to get it to roll. If you don't twist it, it doesn't roll right. It won't sit properly. So like when you see this cable, when you see me unravel this, you'll see how it kind of comes out all twisty, and I have to straighten it to get all the curves out of it. And when I want to roll it back up again, I've got to grab it and make a loop. Right, so I'm holding it here, and then I'm going to twist this. Watch what happens when I twist this cable. It starts to form a circle, and then I'll hold on to it, and I'll twist it again, just like a garden hose. Just keep twisting it, and it starts to loop around in a big circle. And the problem is, of course, when you go to unravel it and use it, just like a garden hose, it wants to kink up. And in order to prevent that, it's important that you just run it straight through your hands and make sure it's all untwisted. And that makes your life so much easier. So twist it when you're putting it away, untwist it when you're unrolling it, but it's super easy to do. I guess nobody ever taught that to me, so for a long time I couldn't figure out why my cables never looked as nice as other people's, and I was trying to make it go around in circles instead of twisting it, and that was a long time ago, but nonetheless, I'm sure I'm not alone in not knowing that. So there's another tip from your Uncle Gary. Sure. Not all these tips are rocket science. Let's see. We'll run that fan cable under there. And I should have a fan header under here somewhere. Ah, yes, there's one right here. Now, the Corsair 200R only has 3-pin fans. I've already got a little quick tips video on a 3-pin versus 4-pin fans, the difference. Either one will plug onto the motherboard header. They're all compatible. I just want to get this keyboard and mouse out of my way. Remember, we have no window on the case. So the primary reason for cable management here is to make it easier to work on in the future. And also, when the customer does pull the side panel off, I'd like them to be wowed that someone took their time and had pride in the build, that you can see that it wasn't just slapped together sloppily. Peter Brooks joins us, as well as Pete Stern. Welcome in, guys. And Go Shadow, Gary Whitaker. Hi, guys. Big K Basha just posted his build. I don't know why that was hidden. That's kind of weird. Nothing wrong with that. It looks like a good build. A Corsair 200R case, 500 watt EVGA power supply, a Gigabyte Z390D. What's a Z390D? It's got an Intel Core i5 9400, which is a good CPU, a Samsung 1 terabyte NVMe solid state drive. How much RAM did you put in there? Marty has contributed $20. He goes, that is the trick. Just listen to Carrie. It's all OMG. You're good, bro. Love your videos and everything you do. Right on, Marty. Thank you. Michael Martin says, g'day, Carrie. I'm here across the pond enjoying your stream of this build. Right on. Thank you. Go Shadow says he's got spools on pegs. Easy roll and unroll. Yeah, well. Maybe someday when I, get into the big bucks like you, I get one of those. Big K Basha said he's using Corsair Vengeance DDR4. He's got 16 gigs, 2x8, running at 3,200 megahertz. Maybe one improvement would have been to go to two 16 gig, so you have a total of 32. I think your system would just be that much better. But you picked all really good components, and I'm sure it's ultra fast and ultra quiet. Did you go with a stock cooler, or are you using a third-party cooler? Spock Wilburn said it's going to be fun finding a motherboard without RGB. Oh, there's plenty of motherboards without RGB. It's not that difficult. There's a trend in the higher end boards for the RGB, the lower end boards or more price conscious boards, and also business boards don't have RGB. Ghost Shadow says you should see how brittle zip ties get after 10 years. Oh, I know. Believe me, I know. Here in the desert, especially in a low humidity, all year round atmosphere, any sort of plastic will get brittle. The difference is, if these little plastic or nylon zip ties get brittle and break, they won't cause any harm or pose a danger to the system. You see, the wire ties also get brittle over time, but when they break and become brittle and break, then that's a piece of wire floating around in your computer that could end up behind your motherboard, or shorting out a circuit on any electronic part that's exposed in the case. And you just will turn your system on one day and sparks or smoke or who knows, could blow a circuit breaker, who knows. So it's really important to remove those wire ties because they will eventually break. I've seen it too many times. So again, these will break too, but when they do break, no harm. It's like a rubber band, you know, they work great for a while and then you go to stretch it and it just breaks, just becomes brittle. But it also depends on your environment. Here in Arizona, again, with a very low humidity, we tend to see that more than, say, just about anywhere else. Big K Bosch says, I used the fan that came with the i5 9400 processor. Yeah, it's fine. Just curious. Jack says there's another way to do cable coiling. The Navy way was to coil ropes on deck so it doesn't kink when uncoiling it. I still don't know how to do it. Well, that's not very helpful to me. Barry says, are you waiting on Mitch to finish the Xenos build? I'm not intentionally waiting on Mitch, but that may end up happening. We'll see. Any excuse to bring Mitch back is a good excuse. Dave Murray says, my bones are getting brittle after 74 years. Yeah, well, you know. Be glad you don't live in the desert. Jason Larson says to Dave Murray, he says, just use some zip ties on them brittle bones and they'll be stronger. And Patrick Manning says, welcome to the 74 Club, huh? Look at you guys. Where'd all these old men come from? And when did I become one of them? I did not agree to this. That's all right. This older guy walked up to me at the restaurant the other day. I was waiting in line to order at the counter. And he looks at me, and I guess I have a face that says, tell me a joke. I don't know this guy. And this is very unlike Phoenix behavior. This is more, you know, people in Phoenix, they don't even acknowledge each other's existence. So I was like, sort of like waiting for the worst. Like this is something that's going to turn into something big. But no, the guy just said, hey, you know what's worse than having ants in your pants? And I said, no, what's worse than having ants in your pants? And he said, uncles. Okay. The guy didn't work there. He's just a customer. He apparently saw me and decided that I needed to hear that. So I have decided that you needed to hear it. So there you go. When I cut the little pigtails off, I like to get it as close to the connector as possible, because otherwise it leaves a little sharp edge sticking out. And if you sort of reach your hand in there to work on it and you rub up against it, it'll cut you good. So you'll see, all I'm doing at this point is nylon zip tying all the cables that all go to the same place. You'll see I'm not zip tying all these together. I will zip tie these together, I will zip tie these two together, and I'll do the full length of the cable at every 3 or 4 inches. There'll be another zip tie. Once that's done, then I will zip tie the bundles together. And that way, when and if the time comes to work on the machine, one master zip tie can be cut. I usually use the thicker ones so they're bolder and going to draw attention. And then separate bundles can be moved apart so that you can then just remove the one you need to remove. And in this case, like these front port umbilicals, they should never be a case that I can imagine where you ever have to unzip tie these. They should always stay together. It's not like you're ever going to need to replace them. And if you were going to replace them, generally you replace the whole front unit on the 200R, and many other cases follow that same design. I also spent some time last night updating the Amazon store, which I have listed all of the products that I'm using, from these wire cutters to the keyboard and mouse, the power screwdriver, and even the cameras and tripods, tripod heads, memory cards that go in the cameras. So I added the GoPro and that new stabilizer, and there was a needle nose pair of pliers also from that company, Engineer from Japan, which I've only maybe taken them out once now, but I anticipate they'll have their day when I have a build that requires them. They look really nice. And there were some items I don't use anymore that I took out, like the old gray Panasonic screwdriver. I don't use that anymore, and it's hard to find it. So I just went ahead and took that out of the list and just kept the red Milwaukee M4 in there. I still had the old magnetizer, which Amazon wasn't selling anymore, and I don't even use that one. I use the big red one. And I found it in blue on Amazon and put that in there. So there's like 110 items, I think, that I use in production or as tools for my business that you can purchase on Amazon. And of course, if you use my Amazon link to make any purchase whatsoever, the channel will make a small commission from that. And that commission is something I split with Mike Smith over at TechVets. He and I promote the same link, and then we just share the monthly revenue that it generates, 50-50. And yeah, my sister had to order like 16 HP computers for her. They're like touchscreen computers, nothing I can build. And she goes, maybe I should use your Amazon link for that. And I'm like, yeah, please do. It's like one sale of $16,000 or something for her company, and or the company that she works for. And I don't know what my commission is on that, but I'm sure it was more than $1. So yeah, it doesn't change the price of what you're paying for anything. It changes nothing on your side. But if you just use my link to take you to Amazon and then purchase anything from Amazon, because it was my link, I make a small commission, which is cool, you know. And by the way, even if you're ordering a $5 item and maybe I make 10 cents, if everybody who watched these videos did that and orders from Amazon anyway, that can generate more revenue at the end of the month than what YouTube pays me. So it's another way to support the channel, since you're shopping there anyway and buying things anyway and paying the same price anyway. It's just the only difference is how you're getting to Amazon by using my link rather than just going there manually. So keep that in mind if you want to, you know, give back that way. It's always appreciated. And I can't see who's buying anything, but I can see what is sold. Like I can see the 16 computers were sold and how much money was generated that day from my link, but I can't see who did it or where they are or anything like that. I'm doing my best to stay sponsor free, and you guys have been fantastic in helping me maintain, you know, the stress of basically what would happen is I would have to start sending out emails and making phone calls, trying to talk to the right people to convince them to sponsor me, and I can't make videos and do that at the same time, and that could take a long time. And then whatever the arrangement is for the length of term for that deal, if they don't want to renew that deal for whatever reason, I got to start all over again. Go Shadow says, what would you do if anyone sent you a Packard Bell? Well, Packard Bell is still in business in Europe. They only closed out in the United States. And they were junk, which, you know, what a shock. They went out of business because they're junk. In the United States. I don't know how they do things in Europe, if they're building the same stuff or if they're doing it differently, but I haven't seen a Packard Bell in 20 years. Honestly, I don't care what anybody sends me to fix. It Doesn't matter to me. If I'm able to fix it, I'll fix it. The problem gets to be when you have some of these proprietary design systems, getting parts of them can be a challenge, and sometimes the value of the system is less than what it would cost to fix. And I'm afraid that might be the case with a Packard Bell, but again, that's coming from an American perspective where they've been out of business a very long time. On the European side of things, I honestly don't know how they're regarded in that issue of quality. See, I can already see I've got a little cable overlap here that's kind of bothering me. I think I want to run the audio cable around the other side. Like this. See, stuff like that I try and think ahead of, so I don't have to unplug it and do it again, but apparently I didn't do a very good job that time. Let's see. So the problem now, I can't plug that cable back in because the Wi-Fi card is in the way. So I'm going to just take the Wi-Fi card out. See, something as simple as just not paying attention to where I ran the cable during the initial build process requires a little more effort during the cable management stage. Mostly my mind is on getting the machine to be built properly, primarily, and test fired and everything before I worry about the cable management. But as I'm building, oh, now look at here, I see I pulled these cables off too. As I'm building, I try as a secondary priority to think about how I'm running the cable. And depending on which cable I install first, sometimes it's the order in which I did things that affected the poor decision making that would require me to do what I'm doing right now for not doing it right the first time. Again, not the end of the world. I hate doing things twice, that's all. It's a pet peeve I have. And then these little front umbilicals are coming off because I have not given myself enough slack. So all I have to do is pull a little bit on them so that it adds a little more pressure this way towards pushing the cables on versus the tautness of the cable being tied, pulling it. You know, if you make it too tight, it pulls the cable off of the connector. Especially cables like the front port umbilicals or the audio or USB that don't have any clips, like the USB 2. USB 3 does have a clip, but it's not very strong. So this USB 3, the little, it's not even it has small little clips on it that just barely hold it in. I really wish they would redesign that better, but I'm going to put these on now for a third time. That's my power LED. Keeps falling off. But now it should be good. And that's why I always have to test fire a machine after I do the cable management to make sure all the LEDs and switches still works, that I haven't, accidentally pulled them off their connectors by being too aggressive in the cable management. It's one thing to make it look nice, it's another thing to sort of cement it in place. You get those nylon zip ties on there so tight nothing moves. And then here in the front case fan, I'm just going to fold that just like this. And that's going to stay all by itself just like that. And that way, if the fan, and well, not if, but when the fan dies and has to be replaced, there's really no cable management that has to be cut away. The owner could easily do this work his or her own self by simply removing the front panel, taking the 4 screws out, unplugging that one wire, putting the exact same fan back in, same 4 screws, put the wire back in, and if they want to take a moment to zip tie it, they certainly can, and if they don't want to, they don't have to. But they won't have to unbundle any other cables because that will stay on its own just like that for that reason. So that looks good, that looks good. So this USB 3 cable here is a little tricky because it looks like it's folded in on itself. Up here, there's a cable on the left and a cable on the right, and then somewhere around here they switch, and the cable on the right becomes the cable on the left. So what I find is oftentimes this cable is twisted from the manufacturer, and I have to unplug it and pull it out and straighten it this way so I can figure out, you see, as the cable twisted, it flipped which cable was on which side, and you can see there's an overlap right there. I never want to see this overlap. You see it, if I pull it, you can see it like a big X. They should be one cable under the other or above the other the entire way. So if I start at the connector, and you can see that they're stacked one on top of the other, they should be stacked one on top of the other all the way through. And if I reach a point where I can't, where maybe the manufacturer in the building process flipped it, then I will hide it way up here at the top and let it flip way up there where nobody can see it. I kind of wish they had little wire looms or something on these, but I suppose you'd have to spend more money on a case for that. The cheaper the case is, the more of this you can expect to have to do. Some of the nicer NZXT or higher end cases are already bundled up for you in real nice, like looms. But this isn't the worst thing in the world, it's not a big deal. It's a little tedious. It's not exactly brain work, it's sort of mind numbing. But it does make working on it so much easier in the future. And it looks nice, for anybody that's going to get in there and look. Sort of like when people clean the engine on their car, who's going to see it? But it does make it easier to work on, and when you do look under there, you're like, wow, that's really nice. So like on that one cable alone, I've used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nylon zip ties. And now, as I think about how this is going to go back in, I want to rotate it in such a way that it won't twist on itself. And it's going to be a little less pliable. You'll see that when I bend the cable, you see how this piece comes up right here? Because this cable becomes shorter in length because of it. And so if you tighten these down too tight, then you just end up with this ugly loop. But I've tightened it down tight enough that these nylon zip ties will not slide up and down. But at the same time, if I need to pull some extra cable through, I've given myself enough leeway in how I've tightened it so I can make those little minor adjustments, which just, again, is not necessary to the build of the computer. It's not about the reliability. This is just an aesthetic. It's a look. And if I'm going to make it look nice, I don't want to make it look half nice. It's really the same amount of effort. So I will just do what I can. So you can see, like, I'm trying to bend this end of the cable, and it's getting a little loop right there. And that one I've just tightened it too much, so I have to cut it off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook this back up first and foremost so I can get a better look at how that cable is going to, where it's going to have its little loop at. I see it's right there. That's better. And now I'll just grab another one. So now, what was I at, 6 before? Now I'm at 7. Just on this one cable. That's okay. It's worth it. That looks good. And then we'll just, now this one you want to be real careful that you don't want to pull it too tightly. You could actually snap the connector right off of it. So you're going to keep a little loop on it inside of the case. This is the SATA cable for the optical drive, the data cable. And if I plug that in, and then we can come around, and this again will be one that's tied all on its own. And I will just loop it on itself, just like this. I don't know if you guys can see that. You know, they say you're not supposed to loop these SATA cables like this. You should put them over each other. It can create interference, but I've never experienced it. It must be from cheaper cables or something, I don't know. But I've never seen any negative effects from doing this. I only see positive effects, and that is, again, a system that looks cleaner, is easier to work on. You don't have a big old rat's nest of cables. And little by little, you'll see it starts coming together. It starts looking much cleaner now than it did just a few minutes ago when I started. "690 people are watching live around the world. Welcome in, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Bear Paws contributed £2. He says, what make and model is the Wi-Fi card? The Wi-Fi card, let's see if I can get you an Amazon link to that. So the Wi-Fi card that I'm using is right here. I was trying to generate a link, but I guess I have to be signed in to do that. So I'll just give you the regular link here. There's the link. Steve Devine contributed $2. He says, thanks. Thank you, Carrie, for all you do for us. Hey, thank you, Steve. Rusty Nails contributed $5. He says, looking at all the projects in the kitchen, I guess asking if you have any new recipes for your cooking channel is superfluous. Yeah, that's the last thing on my mind right now. I have just a couple of recipes rolling around in my head I'd like to share with you when I have some time, but as long as customers are waiting, I've got to prioritize them, obviously. There's some discussion about removing the login password from Windows 10. You'll see when I build machines, they don't require passwords. Passwords don't really keep anybody out. At least login passwords don't, unless you're on a server. But for the most part, that, I guess, is just there to, it's very basic security to keep non-technical people out of your computer. But yeah, you don't have to have it. You can turn it off. And there's some answers there in the chat room on how to do that. Okay, let's see, what was I doing here? So the audio cable, that's a tough one to wire tie because there's just not quite there's only like 2 inches of slack on it. And it's such a thick cable. I find it, at least on the 200R, to just kind of run it down and out of the way. And then I still have to hook up power before I get too excited about being nearly done. I've got to hook power up to the DVD drive, and I can choose to run it straight up to the DVD drive, or I can choose to run it through the back of the case and try and hide it, which is always what I try and do. But remember, on the 200R, they don't give us a lot of space between the back panel and the back of this motherboard tray. So the more things you decide to hook up, like if we're going to hook up a bunch of hard drives and things and we're going to run the cables back here, it becomes more and more cables that have to get bundled much more carefully to get them flush, like this, for example, than if I bundled them on top of each other. Now the cover won't go on or it'll have a bulge in it. So I've got to lay each cable flat against the case as much as possible. And as I'm tying the nylon zip tie, I want to be loose enough that the cables don't start to stack on top of each other and then they become taller and then it interferes with the panel. Again, this is less of a problem on other cases that have better wire management built in. What comes to mind is both the Be Quiet and the NZXT cases allow for more space between that back panel and the motherboard tray. Corsair is giving us maybe half an inch, or maybe just a little bit more than half an inch between the back of this motherboard tray. And that cable right there is half an inch all by itself. So things can get pretty tight on here when you have a very basic build. One of the reasons I don't like adding an optical drive is because it adds those 2 extra cables I have to manage on a 200R. It's just kind of a little bit of a pain in the butt. However, it's not a big deal. It's just me being lazy, I guess. It's just more work. Why I love the M.2 drives so much is you just plug it in. There's no cable management. You don't have to worry about cables falling off. You don't have to worry about the power cable, the data cable. I just realized I haven't screwed the optical drive in, so we're going to have a couple of screws here and lock that in place so it doesn't dislodge in shipping. If I wasn't shipping the computer, I really wouldn't worry about it. Trying to remember where this one's going. I can't remember what state this is going to. Andrew Brockington's contributed $5. He says, Carrie, keep up the good videos. Yes, sir, Andrew. Thank you. Glad you enjoy them, and thanks for supporting them. Okay, that locks the optical drive in now. So as you can tell, when I'm doing my build videos, what I'm trying to do is show you all the technical stuff. I'm showing you all the, the $400 processor, the $150 RAM, and the $50 cooler. I'm primarily putting my focus on those parts because it's critical you get all that right. When it comes to the cable management, putting a couple of little screws in, stuff like that's not really important. Like, you can do that any way you want to do it, or don't do it at all, and it'll probably be just fine for you. So this is all sort of the extra thing that's typically done off camera, and then I would bring back the camera or turn it back on to show you what it looks like when it's done, because I think it's profoundly boring to watch, and I apologize that that's what you're watching today. But it was this or no video at all. It was looking that way. And you'll see how much time this takes. As far as the build process goes, I can spend just as much time on cable management as I built putting the whole system together, depending on the complexity of the components that are selected and the case, right? And no differently, like with these extra cables we won't be using on the power supply, these will just fold up onto each other. And I'll do the same thing with this one, which is more or less how it came out of the box. And then I'll take those two and put them together. And then I will run a nylon zip tie right across the bottom. And we'll keep those cables, there's holes on the bottom of the case, and it'll secure those cables so they won't move around during shipping. And it's also a nice clean look when it's all said and done, because running these back behind would be a pain in the butt, especially if you want to add something to the computer quickly. You should only have to take this one panel off. Ramon Rodriguez has contributed $2. Thank you, Ramon. Freedom Flights has contributed $1.99. He says, what size Phillips head are you using? Primarily with a computer build, you're going to use a Phillips number 2 for most everything. However, the M.2 drive and the little screws that they use for SSDs or M.2s may require a Phillips number 1 or what is the Japanese Industrial Standard, or JIS screwdrivers. The JIS screwdrivers, I just bought the one, and I mean, it fits so much nicer than a Phillips number 1 and those little tiny screws. And I want to remind you that all the tools that you see me use are all in my Amazon store link in the notes below this video. And you'll see every screwdriver I use there. And that's where I bought them, was from Amazon. And thank you for the contribution. David Bronson's contributed $2. Hey, thank you, David. Years ago, I was once on a team that would build about 10 computers a day, and they were Pentium 4s. I know what it's like. So when I worked over at TriStar Computer, we were building 486s, and I think we were building, trying to remember how many we do. I think we did about 60 or 80 a day, if I'm not mistaken. But it was done in an assembly line process where each person did a specific job as it moved down the line. And then sometimes, there were a few occasions where they were so busy, they had so many orders, they were backed up, and then I was caught up on the other side of the shop that I would come over because I enjoyed building, and I would build off the assembly line. Like, I got to be different, right? So rather than join in the assembly line, I mean, the assembly line only moves as fast as the slowest person. I just went up to the cage, which was a fenced-in, locked area where they kept all the expensive parts. And they would hand you a plastic bucket with all the parts and a build list. And I would just take that over to a bench, and I would build the entire thing by myself. And then I would send it off at the end of the assembly line where they did the software install. So I wasn't bothered with the software install. I let that guy do that. But I would build maybe three or four in an 8-hour day. Here I go a lot slower because I've got to explain what I'm doing, and I'm not just jamming cables on, and I'm also not in a hurry. I'm not being pushed. Some people think that slowness relates to not being good at what you do. Like, if you were good at what you did, you'd be faster. But being faster is the exact opposite of teaching. With teaching, you've got to go slow. And I also don't have the amount of energy I used to have. You know, I think human beings are sort of like a battery. You know, when you're younger, when the battery's new out of the package, that battery's got a lot of punch. As you get older, just like a battery, that energy level starts to go down. And you may not notice it at first, but somewhere in your 30s, maybe your 40s, suddenly, you know, there's a little less charge on the battery. And it gets to a point, you know, when you get to a certain age that just getting out of bed is an effort, you know, it's just the battery's low. We got to figure out a way to recharge those batteries. That's all I'm saying. There's got to be a way, apart from exercise and diet, there's got to be a pill. I don't know. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of a battery. You'll see like older people walking a bit slower than the younger people because they don't have as much of a charge. You know what I'm saying? Simple stuff. Marty's contributed $10. He goes, hey, no need to apologize because I love the way you do the cable management. I can tell I have 3 computers that you built at home. Yeah, and a 4th one will be coming. Thank you, Marty. David Bronson says, Carrie, please help. I'm trying to find 128 gigs. He needs 4 sticks of 32 gigs each of DDR4, 4,000 or faster. Newegg and Amazon, no one at any price or so it seems. I think you'd be hard pressed to find 32 gig modules right now. In fact, the limit on the 1151 sockets and the AM4 sockets up until recently was 64 gigs. It's only through a BIOS update recently, like within the last year, that opened that window up to 128. And as such, memory manufacturers, there are 32 gig modules available, but you're not going to have your pick of the litter of like what color you want, or if it's going to have RGB or competitive pricing or even mega. There's so few and far between right now. You sort of can get whatever you can get if you can find them at all. They're pretty hard to find. So my suggestion to you is either wait. When DDR5 comes out, that should be a problem that's resolved right away. Or either reduce your need for 4,000 speed or go to 64 gigs and just leave it at, 4 sticks at 16 gigs apiece. Right now, if you can find a 32 gig stick, that in and of itself is a find, as far as I'm concerned. So, I'm sorry I don't have better news for you than that, but the market's just not there yet. Carrie, can we use a debit card to donate to you? Yeah, the PayPal link down below in the video notes, you can do that, or even an Amazon gift card can be purchased with a debit card through Amazon. So either way, PayPal takes a bit of percentage, Amazon doesn't. David says he can find 32 gig sticks at 3,600 megahertz. Well, I think that's pretty much all you're going to find at this time. So, I mean, you may choose to wait or settle for 3,600. See if we can make David a moderator in here. Here we go. Peter Limbrick says, Carrie, when I can afford to, I will update my tools through your Amazon link. Just do what I did. I didn't buy all these tools at once. I bought these tools as I needed them. And if money was permitting, I'd buy a tool I anticipated needing. But I didn't buy a bunch of tools at once. It's just too expensive. And furthermore, some tools are used more than others, and so those are the ones I would get first. So basically, having a bunch of tools sitting in a drawer that you're not using is no different than not having those tools, as far as I'm concerned. And Brendan just posted the PayPal link there for contributions. Thank you. Thank you, Brendan. And as Cosmos says there, you can hit the thumbs up button if you enjoy the content, you'd like to see more content like this. The thumbs up button is just below the video, and when you click on it, it'll turn blue. And what that does essentially for a content creator for a YouTube video is a video that has a lot of likes will show up higher in search results. So if somebody were to type in how to build a computer, the videos that appear in the search will be the videos with the largest amount of likes, basically, or the largest amount of views, or a combination of the two. And that includes dislikes too. The algorithm likes controversy. So if there's half as many likes as dislikes, or if it's split 50-50, that also supposedly helps search results because it gets people angry or excited. It brings out an emotion in them that is more likely to trigger involvement or participation on behalf of the viewer. That's my theory on that whole reason why YouTube does that. But some people think they're causing harm to the channel by clicking the thumbs down button. But the fact that you're even clicking shows participation, and it shows that something about that video created a reaction. Because you'll see far more viewers are passive. They don't hit thumbs up or thumbs down. The vast majority of viewers, like if you look at any random video on YouTube, look at the total number of views and look at the total number of likes and dislikes, and you'll see that generally fewer than probably 5% of the people can be bothered to click their mouse one way or the other. So the fact that people do that isn't hurting the channel when they hit the thumbs down. Somebody might say, I don't like that Car-ey guy. I'm going to go through every one of his videos and thumbs down every one of them. Thank you. That's one of the nicest things you can do because that triggered something in you. And that lets YouTube know, if enough people do that, start recommending these videos to people because it's creating more interaction with them and they're more likely to stay and watch more, even if it's not for the reasons that you might assume. It doesn't matter what the reason is. All that matters is there was a click. And when you don't get that click, that's the worst. Like if you really want to harm a channel, don't click and view any other videos. Just viewing it adds to the view count. It doesn't matter if you viewed it for 2 seconds, counts as another view. Thumbs up or thumbs down still counts as an interaction, which most videos, again, just look at any video, has a very low percentage of views to interaction. And the higher up that interaction is, good or bad, it's interaction, raises the results on the YouTube video, on the search results of the YouTube video. So that's how that all works. And obviously, it lets me know as a content creator if I'm getting a lot of likes on a specific video that are just disproportionate than what I would normally see, then that kind of tells me I need to revisit this or I need to expand on this more. So, and it's just one click. That's all you have to do. And you can do it through a TV. Usually on your remote control, you'll have an up, down, left, and right arrow. And as you're playing back any YouTube videos, because people will say to me, well, I don't have that option on my TV. You do. Just play with your remote while you're watching a YouTube video. Usually, like on a Samsung TV, it's the down arrow. And then the options will open up for the YouTube app on the television. Car-ey, will you ever stream again on Twitch? Twitch has made a lot of money for me, and they've paid me nothing, so I'm kind of done with them. I never say never, but at this point, I don't have any motivation. I spent over $1,000, more than $1,000. I spent about $2,500 streaming on Twitch in order to make that happen. Built a whole computer just for that purpose. And Twitch gave me nothing. They just kept dangling a carrot. Say, you just got to achieve, unlock this next achievement and you can enable affiliates and things like that. And it just, every time I'd reach that, they'd change it and make it higher. And I just got fed up with them. They actually called me and said, hey, how come you're not doing this anymore? I said, well, who's paying for it? Well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, who's paying for it? Who's paying for the electricity? Who's paying for the bandwidth? Who's paying for this? I said, you guys are getting all the benefit. I understand why you're calling me, but you understand you've never paid me a dime, right? He goes, well, if you just hang in there longer, I'm like, well, you finance it. If you're so certain, just reimburse me for my expenses and I'll keep going. And he goes, oh, I can't do that. And I go, well, I'm cutting my losses. I can't afford for you guys to profit off of me anymore. And he said, I don't mean to be rude, but I got to be honest with you. I said, you don't understand or appreciate the amount of money I spent in order to start this and make this go. And you want me to continue as you continue to profit off me with no reassurance that I'll ever make a dime. And you keep changing the rules. Like every 6 weeks, they change the rules. I'm so done with Twitch. It's such an immature platform. They need to figure out what they want to do. And when I say immature, I don't mean childish. I mean it hasn't been around long enough for them to figure out what the heck they're doing. They keep changing their minds. And I need that to settle, and I need them to be definitive on what it's going to take. And if Twitch wants me there, they can make me a deal. They can give me an advance to help offset what they've already made for me, first of all, and encourage me and incentivize me to do more so that they can make more. I'll make more and they'll make more. But as long as they want to continue to take, and they're not giving me anything in return other than a phone call, no, that's not smart business. I mean, I guess it's smart business for them. I mean, if somebody wants to work for them for free, I understand their side of it. So I think that the Twitch model had potential, but currently it doesn't make any sense. And just to give you an example, I could rent a server, a virtual server, upload a bunch of my build videos to it. I've got enough build videos. Load the VLC software and the OBS software on the virtual server and have it stream 24/7 to Twitch. And I don't even have to use my internet connection. But the cost of paying for that virtual server will be 3 times more than Twitch would ever pay me, if I could even enable the affiliate marketing to work. It doesn't make any sense. If I do it here in my house, I don't have enough upload bandwidth to support me being live on YouTube and being on Twitch at the same time with different content. Like I can upload the same content to both places, but the interactivity, the interaction, obviously would have to be one or the other. I can't monitor all the different platforms at the same time. So ideally, Twitch would be its own thing, and I could just have it set to broadcast. Heck, Twitch could even make it easy on me and let me upload my videos directly to them, which they used to do, and then let me air them like a television station. You know, let Twitch play the videos back locally in a loop, even randomize them. And I have enough content that you won't see the same video twice for at least 3 or 4 days if you're watching 24/7. I've got over 1,000 videos on YouTube. And with build videos being, you know, anywhere from 1.5 hours to 5 hours long, and with I don't know how many builds under my belt here on YouTube, that's plenty of content that would be new to a lot of viewers. And to just upload it to Twitch and let them cycle it through a channel, but I can't, they're not letting me do that. So it means I have to rent a server somewhere, or I've got to provide it myself and pay for the bandwidth. It's frustrating, you know, it shouldn't be this hard. I don't see any good reason for it. I don't see why Twitch is doing this, but it's just not the right platform for me, I guess. If it doesn't make any sense, it's obviously not designed for me. I was just shocked that they called me and said, hey, would you come back? And I was like, well, would you pay me? And they said no. And I said, well, I'm not coming back. Well, if you just stick it out a little longer, I'm like, well, who's paying for it? How much more do I have to lose before I make $1? And I just told the guy, I said, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just telling you, business-wise, this doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense. And I realize you're not the guy who decided the rules, but you need to think about what it's like on the other side of Twitch, what it's like on the creator side and the expenses that are involved. This idea that everybody's 14 years old using their parents' internet connection and their parents are paying for everything, you know, when they make $100, it's a big deal. I said, for me, that doesn't even cover one part of a computer build. So there's an investment there as well. And, you know, guy really didn't have much to say other than, you know, thanked me for my time and we went our separate ways. It's too bad, because I was hoping that the reason they were calling is they were willing to work with me. But they were just calling to get me to work for free. The whole point of the call was to convince me to keep spending my money to produce content for them that they were profiting from. And they were not sharing any of those profits with me because I did not hit all of their milestones. But that didn't stop them from generating all the cash from my content. And their phone call was clearly just to convince me to continue doing what I'm doing and to keep dangling that carrot, and that I would grab that carrot one day if I just kept at it. Don't fall for this, guys, man. Don't let people manipulate you. If they were sincere, they would have addressed my concerns and they would have worked it out. But they absolutely had no intention, and the guy who called me had no control over the rules, or I don't even want to say authority over authorizing an advance or a royalty. So his whole purpose was just to bring me on board and convince me to continue to work for free. And he couldn't promise me I would ever make $1. So it's not always about the money, guys, but the videos do cost money to make. So without at least making a bare minimum to cover the expenses, it's not possible to sustain it. It just sinks. You know, it's kind of simple math, really. I'm not talking about, buy me my yacht. I'm just saying I gotta break even. And breaking even isn't even sustainable for very long. But breaking even at least lets you know the carrot is reachable. If you're just eating enough to survive, it's not enough. It'll do for a little while, but after a certain amount of time, it just won't work anymore. And that was the whole issue, and continues to be the issue with Twitch, unfortunately. Yeah, it's frustrating because I did see the opportunity there, and it just kind of offended me the way that Twitch handled it. And that's why I think that's due to the immaturity of the channel. I think it needs time to figure out what their business model is and figure out what content is worth to them, and start treating their content creators with a bit more value than they do now. It works both ways. I need a platform to share my videos, but they need videos to share on their platform. So for them to put themselves at an 80%, or in my case, 100% of the revenue collection and give me 0, they're not doing me any favors, despite their attempt to suggest they were. All right, let's see. Let's get this cable hooked up. How do I want to do this one? I think the best way to do this one, we'll go like this. This is just power for the DVD drive. Oops. I think in order to keep my cables as thin as possible, from bundling up, I'm going to just go ahead and wire tie these together now, and I'll just have an extra power cable hanging out by the DVD drive. And then I'll put 2 on this one because I need to have it I don't want the other end swinging out, so I wanted to have it all bundled together. And I put it on backwards. I'm having a day today. What's up, boy? How's Lyle doing today? Are you a good boy? Oh, getting stuck on my cables. No, I gave you a cookie earlier. You already got one earlier. I don't remember. Yes, you got one earlier. No, I didn't. You did. You can wag that tail all you want. No, it's not happening. What's up, Jimmy? What's up, Cocoa Puff? Oh, look at his mean face. Mean face. Yar. Arr. Hey, Jimmy. Well, you can look at that cookie jar all day. I'm not moving. Good luck, buddy. So anyway, so by placing the one cable up there, and I just let the other cable point up and out of the way, and then that reduces the amount of cable I've got to deal with back here, because that hard connector right there, it's not very malleable. So we want to make sure that we can get that as close to the back of the case as possible without stacking it. If I stack it on top of this other thick cable, I can tell you right now that back panel is going to have a hard time going on. It'll be like trying to close an overstuffed suitcase. And you might think, well, you just have to do it once, but that's not true. At some point, you're going to take that back panel off to do some kind of work, whether it's an upgrade or a repair or what have you, even a power supply replacement. And then that's going to make it a pain in the butt to pull the panel off, and then you might find that the panel is permanently warped. After sitting like that for months or years, the metal takes on that shape. And then even if you address that and fix it, well, it doesn't matter anymore because the metal's already shaped that way. And that, look, that's not the end of the world. Some people don't even care. But if I'm building a new computer and it's not mine, it's going to somebody else, it has to be, it has to be professional. It can't look like some guy built it in his garage. It's got to look better than what you can buy from Dell or HP. It's got to look better than that. And that's not a high bar. Ghost Shadow says, if you can still touch your knees, then you're not too old. Forget about reaching the toes. Lyle has a lazy ear. I call it his goat ear. Carrie, will the H370HD3 motherboard take a 7th generation processor, or is it just 8th and 9th gens? So what you can do is go to Google and type in H370HD3, and what it'll pull up is Gigabyte's main support, or the main product page for that motherboard. And then it'll say support, and you click on that, and it'll say CPU list. And in that CPU list, and by the way, this is for every motherboard ever made, there's a CPU list that will identify every CPU in numerical order, starting with the well, in most cases, it'll at least start with like an i3 and all the models and i3s and i5s and i7s and potentially i9s that work with the board with the latest BIOS. So rather than tell you yes or no, without asking you specifically what model, I'd rather teach a man to fish, so that way you can eat as often as you like. And that way you can find that information out for any motherboard from any manufacturer with just a couple pushes of a few buttons and a couple mouse clicks. It's all right there for you. It'll be a little tab. Usually it says CPU support. Carrie, can I use your Amazon link here in Europe? Unfortunately, no. The Amazon link is only good in the US. I would have to create a separate Amazon affiliate account for each country. And unfortunately, there's not enough people. Maybe in the UK, maybe would be a country that would be worth me doing it. But there's the other countries, there's just a handful of people that watch. And so it would never generate enough revenue. The percentages are very low. Kerry, what do you think of a GTX 1070 in 2020? I wouldn't buy it. I'd go with a 1660 Ti before I'd go with a 1070. David Smith, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that very much. I'm not reading that question out loud. What's up, Limpy? Looking for sympathy? Oh, see, suddenly he decided he's got a limp now. Nah, I'm not buying it. You're just getting old, man. That's all you gotta do. Just join the club. Okay, so just taking one more glance up in here. So the rear fan's been cable managed. The CPU fan is cable managed. This is all nice and tight in here. That's about all we can do with the USB 3 cable there. And so as I come around now, there's a couple things I want to consider, and that is how I want to bundle these together here on the back, or perhaps start down here at the bottom. I guess I'll start on the bottom and get rid of this bundle. And for that, I need the bigger cable ties. Now, normally I'll use 8-inch cable ties. I think these are bigger than 8-inch cable ties, but I'm going to use them up. They're way too big for computer work. I mean, they're curled because they won't even fit in the container properly. This container was made to hold 4-inch and 8-inch cable ties. You get these all day long at like Home Depot. I think even Harbor Freight Tools has got them. But this is like, there's no way I'm going to wrap a bundle of cables that wide, so I'll be cutting off most of that. But I've got them. Might as well use them. And so what I'm going to do here, as I mentioned, I'm going to take these cables right down here and keep them all bundled together as I sort of already had them. And I'm just going to follow the same bends in the cable that they shipped out of the power supply box, bundled up like that. So they very naturally go back into that position. I'll also add the video cable onto that. And so we have this one big bundle right here. And then there's holes on the bottom of this case. And what I'll do, since I would never put a fan there, that's just stupid. But what these holes are good for is I'll pick something kind of in the middle, and then I'll bring the case up and sort of hold it with my arm to keep it from falling. And then go a couple of holes in the same row maybe, let's see, go about 5 holes away, but on the same row, and we'll bring that back up. That one I usually make it pretty tight. See what I'm saying? Good and flat. I suppose in a perfect world, you know, I'm looking at this and I can see the fat power cable here. I kind of feel like that should run on top of these. And that's not impossible to change right now because I haven't tied anything back with the big power cable. So if I want to, you know, if it's bothering me, push that back through and bring it back through here. And then I can run this on top of them instead of underneath of them. Again, it's just aesthetics. This affects nothing with regards to the performance of the computer. It's really just about the looks of it. And I can push that back through again. See, now that I've done that, I've got a lot of extra cable down there now, but I didn't have before. That makes me want to redo that. Yeah, I guess it'll be all right. It's not perfect. I could do better. Nobody's ever going to see it. And it's still, again, going to make so much easier to work on, just the fact that they're tied up and out of the way. But I could probably have done a better job here. I only say that because I've got this much extra cable that could have been folded under. You know what I can do? I can lift these other cables up and tuck them underneath. That's not a bad look, actually. And that's not going to go anywhere in shipping. I don't need the cables flopping around in there. And I keep pulling this power LED cable off. Okay, so with that side done, now I can work on this side. And that'll be the last part of it. I have those contacts back in today. I'm supposed to wear them for 6 hours today, and I've never worn contacts before. This is only day 2. And I kind of feel like I'm going to have to get a different color because I can't tell if they're in my eyes or not. Like it's a very minor vision correction, and I can't really tell. So when I was putting them in today, I'm like, is that in? You trying to look for the edge of the contact. And if the contact changed my eye color slightly, then I would at least know it was in there. So it's all part of the learning curve, is something new. But I'm liking them. I kind of like the convenience of not having to grab my glasses all the time. So when it comes to this side, there's 2 wire loops on the Corsair 200R. One is right back here. And I run the nylon zip tie through that little bridge. I call it a bridge. And what I can do here is hold these cables as flat as I can get them. Right? And we can start this, but not necessarily tighten it. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the next little bridge right down here, tucked away. I'm going to leave, intentionally, I'm going to leave this fan cable out of it once again. So if the fan ever has to be replaced, and it will, that there won't be any cable ties that have to be cut. Now the reason I don't want to tighten these yet is I have to make a decision with the slack. Do I want the extra slack to be down here? Or do I want it to be up here, or maybe split the difference? I don't want this cable to be too tight or it'll pull those little connectors off. And we're not going to have a lot of slack. So what I can do is pull up a little bit of the slack, fold this cable in on itself, and feed it back down under the same wire tie. But remember, that's making that whole area thicker, which may interfere with our ability to put that cover back on. So I want to try and keep these cables in line like this when I tighten this up. We'll do the same thing down here. See, like this cable here is going in just below the wire tie, so that will just have to be that way. And it doesn't have to be any tighter than that. That's perfect just the way it is. And that completes the cable management. And that's your final look. Not a whole lot we can do about this. I mean, I suppose I could run this cable out through the back and bring it in through the side, but it still has to plug it up on the front. So I think it just complicates having to repair or replace the graphics card later on down the road by doing that. Then, of course, we can test fire it, make sure that I haven't unplugged anything that would prevent it from booting, which, you know, like a power switch, if you tighten that up too much, it'll break its connection, and then you won't be able to turn the machine on. Just double checking my cables, make sure they're seated in there really good. Everything feels good, it looks good. I'm going to just put the back panel on because I feel confident, but I will leave the front panel off. This is the one that if I'm going to have trouble, this will be the one that's trouble for the reasons I mentioned, if the cables stick out too far. And of course, the more hardware you've got in there, the more of a challenge that is. So ideally, this will seat down flush, I hope. Nope, that's not flush. That's good. That's good. Feel the edges, make sure it's flush up on the front, and we'll just slide it forward. So we make sure we're completely flush, especially here on this edge. And you can see that nylon zip tie I put on the bottom. Remember I was talking about the holes? So I've just run that nylon zip tie through those holes in order to hold those extra power supply cables down to the floor of the case. And that way, when the customer wants to add another drive or drives and needs those cables, they don't have to go looking for modular cables. They're all right there. And whether or not they choose to make them pretty when they're done, that's not on me. They can continue what I started and put it back, or they may choose not to. I find most customers would like to do it if they have excuses why they don't do it. I don't have time, I'll do it later. It's clearly not that important to them. But that's okay. When they're paying me to do it, it's more important to them when I'm doing it. And I would be the same way. If I wanted to do it, why would I have paid you? So they expect to get it right. And then if they disassemble it and decide not to put it back together, that's on them. I've got dusty fingerprints all over this now. So let's fire it up one more time and make sure it still boots okay. I think the last thing I have to do, I believe, is to activate Windows, and I'll run the Uncle Carrie's Windows 10 optimizer on it. I still have the keyboard and mouse dongle plugged in. And so these cords are where I can get in trouble with my drinks. So that's when I start moving the drink, because if I start moving the case and the cables move with the case, that'll knock something over on the counter. I need an HDMI cable, so we're going to go do this again. So that means Valentine's computer will be done and be shipped out tonight, and I will start a new build. This one's going to be for Frank. His build will start tomorrow. And it's mostly a lot of the same. I think it's another H370 HD3. I could be mistaken. I've got so many builds, I can't remember who I'm building for, what I'm building for who anymore. But when I start to put the parts list together and everything later tonight, you'll get the notification once that thumbnail and video description are done later tonight. And I'll probably start it around noon tomorrow, Pacific time, maybe a little earlier, we'll see. Okay, so let me flip the switch to on here. This is all part of Xenos, don't let that confuse you, that's a different computer. Let's go to camera 2. Okay, I'm going to turn the machine on. Fans are spinning. Front fan, rear fan, CPU fans going. GPU fans are going. Oh, that's a fast boot up. Me likey. Let's run Prime 95 on here and see how he does. Let me grab my utilities flash drive. I know I ran this before, but just for grins, let's do it again. In fact, I'll tell you something else I want to do. I'm going to put the other panel back, because some of you guys think that the panel makes it run hotter. In fact, the panel, if the air is being moved effectively across the case, the panel should help the cooling. And the reason it helps when it's done right is it'll be drawing air in from the front and preventing it from going out the sides, pushing the air through the radiator and out the back. When I say the radiator, I'm referring to the heatsink. And in doing so, it should be more efficient. When the panels are off and the air can just kind of come and go as it wants to, in many cases, machines will run hotter. But it depends on the airflow management. Some people just add fans to if there's a place for a fan, they add one. And it's ridiculous, and it creates interruptions in the airflow where it prevents the airflow from moving effectively in one direction. For example, if I had a fan blowing air out the top, I would not also have a fan blowing air out the back. It's disrupting the airflow. It's not as efficient. We want air coming in from the front, preferably the lower front, and exiting out the top rear on most computer cases. There are different designs where that changes. If you had an extraordinarily hot GPU, you could put a fan here and blow air directly over that GPU. But now you're interrupting the airflow going this way, and you're now pushing it that way. So you've cooled down one thing, and it might cause you to heat up either over here or over here. So in a perfect world, you wouldn't have a GPU that ran that hot where you needed to use either of these. That's my opinion. All right, let me put me right over there. And let me grab my stopwatch or my timer. Transform. No, I don't want transform. I want full screen projector. Ah, I can see. And let's grab Prime 95 and HW monitor. So we'll run HW monitor. And the system is whisper quiet. It's perfectly silent, which I love. With all those fans turning, you can't hear a thing. There's our temps, where did they go? We're up here. There's our temps currently. And then we'll run prime 95. Go with the defaults, and now that is going to start cranking up on the heat. As it runs, the CPU core, start the timer. As it runs 100% on all the CPU cores. Let me just clean this up a little bit so we can see what's going on here. So this value on the left, that's our current temperatures. The middle temperatures, these represent the lowest temperature it's recorded while the software was running. And the max, that's the one I want to keep my eye on. I want to see that that never hits 85 on any of these cores. And ideally, we won't even see 70. And we'll let this run, again, on all the cores for a full 15 minutes. And you'll see its current core speed, the lowest core speed. The CPU will slow down when it's not being used in order to keep itself cool and to sip on the power. And it will ramp itself up depending on what Prime 95 is doing over here on the right. You may see these numbers go up or down depending on what's being asked of the CPU. There's this false assumption that the CPU should be running at turbo at all times, but it depends specifically what task it's being asked to do, that it logically determines at what speed it can safely do that without causing inaccuracies or crashing. And people like to tweak that stuff in overclocking. They like to force it. But if you leave it alone, you'll find it's slow and steady wins the race. And I don't consider the difference between 4287 and 4589 to be a big enough difference to justify the added expense of cooling and risk that comes along with forcing it. Let it run the way the engineers intended for it to run, and you'll likely have a machine that runs trouble-free and very reliably for a very long time, and quiet too. So while we're waiting for the test, this will be the last part of today's video. It's about 20 minutes to 4. We'll let this run till 4 o'clock, which is 18 minutes. And then I'm going to wrap up the video, and I will get this ready to ship out to Valentine, which means I have to activate it and then run the optimizer on it. And then at that point, it'll be good to go. Valentine will be able to just plug and play. As soon as he gets it, he can plug it in and immediately start using it. I'm also getting a 1-year license of Malwarebytes, which is what I use. I use Malwarebytes paid with Windows Defender. I think Newegg has Malwarebytes on sale today for $24.99, and you can install it on 3 PCs. The version of Malwarebytes I sell is an OEM version. It's good for 1 computer. It's $20 a year. And even on that, I'll only make a couple of bucks on that. But if people are interested in getting that for me, send me an email, let me know, and I can get you, an authentic 1-year paid Malwarebytes license for $20. It'll be good for 365 days on 1 computer. So the deal at Newegg is better than the deal I can offer you, but it's a special thing, and I don't know how many days it's good for, but for $24.99 today at Newegg, they have Malwarebytes, and you can use the same license code 3 times, so it's good for 3 computers. But the license code is good for 365 days from the day it's activated on computer number 1. So if you install it on computer number 2 a month from now, and computer number 3 a month after that, they all expire on the same day. You don't get a year individually. It's a year total from the time you activate the first PC. And that's usually the way multiple licenses work, or multiple installs of the same license are timed to expire regardless of when you installed the second or third one. The clock starts the minute you activate the first one. And that's pretty universal on software. What's the difference between free and paid? So Malwarebytes free is something you can run manually whenever you think to run it, and update it manually to remove any infections you might have on your machine. Malwarebytes Premium or paid will update itself automatically and prevent you from getting the infections to begin with. Now, no antivirus or anti-malware product can prevent 100% of the problems. You still have to make smart decisions. You can't just do whatever you want to and think, well, I'm protected. Somebody driving a Volvo doesn't get to go, well, I'm driving the safest car in the world, so I don't have to learn how to drive. It doesn't work that way. The antivirus and anti-malware are there to assist you, but they're not there to do everything for you. So I find Malwarebytes to be very, very good at what it does. I find the price to be very reasonable. It's very low on resource usage. Every once in a while they get a bad update that causes some problems, but I think that's true of all antivirus companies. And so far, I'm very happy with Malwarebytes over the last 3 or 4 years. We had an incident about 2 years ago that really upset me. It cost me a lot of money. That was all caused by Malwarebytes. They made a mistake, and as far as I can tell, they've not made that mistake again, so I continue to recommend them for that reason. They're not, the biggest fish in the sea. They're not like the Semantics and the McAfees that are everywhere, and they get into your system, and they're difficult, near impossible to get completely off of your system. And I like supporting the underdog, to be honest, if the underdog's got a superior product, which I believe Scythe has with their cooler. I think Malwarebytes is also superior with their protection. That's my opinion, and that's what I advise my customers. And my customers have not called me with any virus or malware issues in about 2 years. At least none of them that are running this combination of Windows Defender or Security Essentials or whatever Microsoft's calling that built-in antivirus. I keep that running because it's free, it doesn't hurt. And then on top of that, run the paid version of Malwarebytes. And with the paid version, they don't have to think to run it, they don't have to think to update it, and they don't have to wonder, did I get anything? With the paid version, it runs all the time, and it prevents things from being put on that are dangerous. The free version only helps you to remove those things. It won't help you to prevent them from getting installed. That's what the paid version is for. So in theory, you never have to run the paid version manually. It does it all automatically. It's hands-off. Some people still like to do it manually, but it's completely unnecessary. If it's not allowing anything to, if it didn't recognize anything as dangerous that it allowed on your system today, it's unlikely that it's going to recognize it tomorrow and say, oh, I changed my mind. So since it's always running on its own in the paid version, it's one less thing you got to worry about. But you still got to make smart decisions behind the keyboard. And hopefully, when you make a bad decision, Malwarebytes will be there to catch you and say, hey, dangerous site, don't go there. And Malwarebytes will pull it up on me sometimes. I get an email from someplace, and I don't know where it came from, and I hit the unsubscribe button, and Malwarebytes goes, no, you don't want to go to that website. It's dangerous. See, it's a trick. They wanted you to hit the unsubscribe button to verify your email was functional. And here I thought maybe somebody signed me up to an email list that I didn't sign up for. And that's how they trick you. And so Malwarebytes was there to save the day and prevent that from happening. That just happened yesterday. We're 8 minutes in on the test, and I have covered up my temps, haven't I? Where are we at on these temps? Oh, we're nice and cool. Nice and cool. Can you use it on a computer and an Android smartphone on one subscription? I don't really think you need it on a smartphone. I think that'd be a waste of money. But I don't know. I really don't know. I don't work for them, and I don't represent Malwarebytes in any way, shape, or form. It's something I use and recommend for my customers. So when it gets to those kind of questions with regard to licensing, no idea. So if you have any questions for me, I've got about 10 minutes left of this video, and I'd be happy to do my best. If I know the answer, I'll share it with you. The latest Malwarebytes Premium deactivates Defender. I've not experienced that at all. If I look down on the system tray, like on this computer, there's a little exclamation point down there. Let me grab the right mouse here and I'll show you. If I see a little yellow exclamation point and it's turned off, I turn it right back on. It doesn't seem to hurt anything at all. It doesn't seem to affect performance. Let's see what this is saying here. Oh, it wants to do a virus scan. Yeah, we'll let it scan while it's doing this at the same time. Let's work the heck out of this machine. Ooh, that raised the temperature a little bit. That's good. And we were hitting a 4.6 gigahertz clock here. So it is turboing properly as it should. What's your favorite combination on a build? Right now, this combination, the 9700K Intel CPU with a Scythe Mugen 5 with whatever RAM you want to put in it, 16 or 32 gigs. Put it on an H370 HD3 motherboard for $100. Throw it into a Corsair 200R for 70 bucks. Put on a cheap $40 EVGA 550 watt non-modular power supply, and put on an Intel NVMe SSD, 1 terabyte, 512, whatever size you want, whatever size you can afford. You'll be moving about 2,000 megabytes a second on your storage. That, to me, is the magic configuration as of February of 2020. Highly recommend this configuration. This machine will easily run very, very quickly. You know, I always like to say 8 years. I think 10 years on this one. The only thing that'll be slow in 10 years' time will be the graphics card. If it's being used for anything like video rendering or anything GPU intensive, that may need to be replaced because it's only a 980 Ti we've put in there now. But that being said, when it comes to like an office computer where you don't even need a GPU, this could run in an office for 10 years, no problem. It's going to open Word and Excel 10 years from now, rocket ship fast. It's going to play your videos, play your music, your Spotify. It's going to open your websites. It's everything you need for work. It's going to do well. When you start getting into specialty needs with specific applications that are particularly resource intensive, obviously you'll need higher end components if you want it to last a really long time. But I would say that these components have good warranties on them, and the maintenance, you know, there's no liquid cooler to worry about a pump. There's not excessive cable management with RGB. It's relatively simple. You're going to hit about $1,000 price point without a GPU. And by adding a GPU, it makes one hell of a gaming machine. So that, how good of a gaming machine depends on how good of a GPU do you want to put in there. You want to put in a $150 GPU, or do you want to put in a $2,500 GPU? Whatever you want to do, and it'll take whatever you put in there. You can also add another M.2 drive for more storage if you want to, whether you do that at the time of build or later on down the road. So you've got lots of room for expandability. It's extraordinarily affordable, and it'll be faster, quieter, and more reliable than anything on the market pre-built that you can buy for the same amount of money. It's untouchable. Now, there's an equivalent on the AMD side. I just don't know what it is because I don't work a lot with AMD customers. I build what customers order, and customers just aren't ordering them like they are ordering Intels. So I'm sure there are other YouTube channels which will make recommendations to that. Vintage 0007 says, I love the videos. Thank you for sharing. Right on. Thank you. Where are we at on the timer here? We've got 14 minutes. Temps are still looking nice and chilly. And I think these are lower temps than I had with the cover off. If you look at the last video, when I put this together and I ran Prime 95 with the covers off, I think we hit 66. Although I think we let it run 20 minutes on that one. But I think it stayed at 66 for like the last 8 minutes. I don't think it really made any difference. So with the covers on, it does appear to be running cooler. Where's my video? Geo Johnson is saying with Malwarebytes Premium installed, you can go into settings and tell Defender to run occasionally. No, I mean, Geo, I've got Malwarebytes installed on my office computer in the back room. It's running Windows Defender. I don't have any, I'm not seeing any of what you're describing. See, a lot of people, they work with one computer and they think their experience with that one computer represents everybody's experience. I work with numerous computers all the time, every day, different customers. One customer may have an office with 15 computers. And if this was an issue, I would see it, but I'm not seeing it. That's something to do with your configuration. I don't know what to tell you on that, but I don't know what it is. But I'm not experiencing that on literally dozens upon dozens of computers I maintain. If Windows Defender was switched off, I'd see it, and it's not. I can look at my back office right now and see it's not switched off. So I don't know what you're seeing or why yours is switching off, but you might go into the Malwarebytes forums and discuss that with them. They might be able to tell you what's different in your configuration that may be causing that symptom. It may be unnecessary to have anyway. It may be a moot point. I run it because it's there. It's sort of a extra cushion. But Malwarebytes is getting better and better. It used to just be, malware, malicious software, but now they're tackling antivirus as well. So the need for Windows Defender is less useful now with the current version of Malwarebytes, but it's not turning it off on any of my machines or any of my customer machines. It's just not happening. So again, you've got something different, and I don't know what it is, but I'm sure the people over at Malwarebytes can tell you. Does Uncle Kerry have a video on his utilities flash drive? Not on the, no. So the utilities flash drive doesn't really have much on it. It's just Crystal Disk Mark, Crystal Disk Info, HW Monitor, and HW Info. One's for Intel, one's for AMD, basically. The Heaven Benchmark, and then my personal utilities. That's all that's on it. You could go and download those things for free. There's really nothing special. Some people have asked me if I'd sell it, but it's not legal for me to sell. I can't grab freeware, package it up, and say it's mine and sell it to you. That is not legal. But you can go and create it yourself. Back in the day, like 10, 15 years ago, I used to have a flash drive just filled with, I don't know, 40, 50 utilities. But Windows 10 takes care of so much of this automatically. Programs like CCleaner, BleachBit, BitBleach, they're just not needed anymore. With Storage Sense turned on, it takes care of it. Programs like the partition tools aren't needed anymore. That can all be done through the Windows control panel. So a lot of those utilities just aren't needed anymore. Primarily, Crystal Disk Mark is just there to make sure the drive is performing as it should. Crystal Disk Info is, again, primarily something I only run on machines that come in with mechanical hard drives that I very rarely see, and it's to check the health status and the age of the drive. CPU-Z I use a lot to look at what's in the box without having to open it, or even sometimes opening it. I don't know what CPU is in there without going into the BIOS. I can bring up CPU-Z, I can see what motherboard BIOS, the model of the motherboard, I can see how much RAM, which sockets the RAM is in. Great little utility, I've been using it for years. Those are the three main utilities I use, those three right there. And when you see me testing a GPU, it's usually the Heaven Benchmark. So that's pretty much it, that's all there is. Prime 95, you'll see I run version 26.6. And again, that's just to cause the CPU to overwork in an unrealistic workload situation for an unrealistic period of time, to measure its maximum temp, to know that, to give me a sense of comfort that if it can pass this torture test, then anything the customer does with it will not compare to what I'm doing to it right now. So if it can fly through this without breaking a sweat, I'm very confident the customer will be happy with this machine for many, many years. I've yet to meet a real life customer who can push a machine in real life harder than Prime 95 does for the period of time that it does it. I've had some people in the chat room or in comments say they do it. Okay, if you say so. But I don't make any money from those people. They're not my customers, and I can't verify what they're telling me is true. So the whole point of their comment seems lost to me. Do you put screws on an SSD in a Corsair $200? You don't have to. They'll lock right into place. 2.5-inch SSDs or 2.5-inch hard drives, as well as 3.5-inch hard drives, have a tool-free installation and removal process on the 200R. What I'd like you to consider, though, is that many of the computers I build have to be shipped. That means they're going to go into a truck and travel across the surface of the United States until they reach their destination. Some of those destinations may be nearly 2,800 miles away. That's a lot of bumpy roads, a lot of days in a truck, and a lot of time for things to shake. So screws are more important so that things don't break loose. But if you're not shipping it anywhere, you can build a Corsair 200R or inside of a Corsair 200R, and none of your storage, whether it's an optical drive or a hard drive or solid state drive, need to be screwed down. It is a toolless lockable design. It doesn't require rails or trays, which is why I lose patience when I get a brand new case in for review and they're still using screws and trays. Trays get lost, trays break, or rails get lost, and it's just a pain in the butt. And 15 years ago, that was acceptable because nobody had anything toolless. But now that Corsair's done this, for how many years has the 200R been out? And it still seems pretty rare to find a case that supports that. That's frustrating to me, because it's got to be cheaper to manufacture. It's certainly more pleasurable to own, since you don't have to go looking for the trays or the screws 3 or 4 years from now when you want to work on it. It's just a smarter design, and other manufacturers should have picked up on it by now. I'm very disappointed at how rare that is. And it makes the 200R very, very valuable to me. Remember, I'm paid by the hour by most of my clients. They want me in and out as quickly as possible. One, because they have an employee that's not able to work while I'm working on the machine. And two, while their employee is being paid to not work, they're paying me. So they want me done quickly, so they pay me less, and their employee can get back to work. And if I got to sit there and tighten down screws and find drive rails and modular power cables, and nobody knows where they are, and everybody's around the office looking, nobody's getting any work done, and the boss is getting angry. That's been running 23 minutes. I let that run way too long. What do my temps look like? Maximum of 65. That's cool. All right, we're going to stop this test, and then you're going to see those temps drop real quick. Test, stop, and okay, now watch those temps. And it stayed quiet the whole time. Pretty cool, literally, pretty cool. It is not your dinner time yet. You're just hungry all the time. You got a tapeworm? That should be your name, tapeworm. Rito says, hola from Mexico, you are the best. Hola, mi amo Carey, mucho gusto. ¿Cómo está? ¿Cuánto por la niña? No. No. I think it's funny, but it's wrong. Okay. Let me switch back to camera 1, full screen. Actually, no. Let's turn this off first. Let's go here. Shut that down. Shut this down. off. And let's go back full screen on camera 1. Once I figure out which buttons to press, there I am. Okay, thanks you guys so much for joining me today. Not the most exciting video I've ever made, but it's all part of the job. It's not all glamorous. It's not all CPUs and RAM all day. Sometimes you gotta, get out the old nylon zip ties and spend a couple hours making it look pretty. Keep the customer happy. You nailed that Spanish, Carrie. Mi perro es muy amable. That's all I know. I can't speak Spanish. My concern is I know enough to introduce myself, say how are you, it's nice to meet you. Donde está el baño? Una cerveza, por favor. But when they talk back to me, I got nothing. It's like, you sort of have to know a little bit. If you live in Phoenix, you're going to have to know a little bit. When I walk the dog through the park and the children want to pet the dog and the parents often don't speak Spanish, I have to learn how to say my dog is friendly, right? So mi perro es muy, my dog is very amable, friendly, so that they can pet him. They know it's okay. So I've learned some of that out of necessity. I've got a neighbor who said, he said something to me and I couldn't figure out what he said because when they speak Spanish, they often speak it very quickly. I find Italian is easier to understand. It sounds similar, but it's spoken slower. In fact, one of the things they teach you when you learn to speak Spanish is how to ask the person to slow down, which I can't remember what that is, but in the moment, the guy waved at me and he said, Buenas tardes. And I was thinking about it. It was like 6 o'clock at night. And I'm like, Buenas tardes is like good afternoon. This is evening. This should be Buenas noches. Right? Buenos dias would be good morning. Buenas tardes is good afternoon. Buenas noches, I think, is good evening. So I looked at him and I went, Buenas tardes, buenas noches. And he looked at me like he didn't know what I meant. And I'm like, and I couldn't think of any Spanish. And that my mind blanked out. And then I couldn't even think of hola. I couldn't think of anything in that moment. It's like stage fright. Like, wait a minute, which one of us should learn the other one's language? Whose job is that? Where do I live? Racist? I'm not a racist, I'm just saying. Is that my job? Should I have to learn it if I don't live in Mexico or Spain? Why do I have to learn it? It sort of becomes a necessity here in order to communicate with people that refuse for whatever reason. Some people have been here 20, 30 years and they claim they don't know a lick of English, but it certainly seems like everybody should know hello and thank you. But for whatever reason, I don't know. Let's not get into that discussion. I'm a firm believer of when in Rome, do as the Romans do. But apparently that's not politically correct anymore. You should be able to go anywhere you want and do anything you want, and everybody should have to tolerate you. In Spanish, we don't say good afternoon, just buenas tardes, buenas noches, y buenos dias. Yeah, right. They should all learn Scottish. Ah! Oh, I think I just spit. Aye, that's Scottish, me lad. Carrie, are you a Roman? No. No. Come on, give me some last minute tech questions, guys. Luke Greenia says, are you kidding? I can't even speak English properly. I hear you. The USA has not a recognized, officially endorsed language. Tell that to the Constitution. Dave says that's Welsh, Carrie. You know, I love the Welsh accent. I love it. I don't know what it is, man. I can't get enough of that. I don't think I could do it. If you think you heard a Welsh accent, then I want to pat myself on the back. Because if I try and do a Welsh accent, it's terrible. It's kind of sing-songy. Where are you going then? You know, it kind of rises and then it lowers and it rises again. I don't know how they do it. It's got a melody to it. I just really like it. Learn Finnish. It's easy. I don't know anybody who's from Finland that I could practice with. But I would love to go to Helsinki during the assembly conference there for the PC demo. One of these years I'm going to make it. And I'm going to bring my cameras and I'm going to do a video about it. What about a distinguished British gentleman voice? Yeah, well, the British, you know, the posh British is pretty simple because it's not a thick accent at all. It's just, you know, pip, pip, stiff upper lip. You know, it's very Hugh Grant, very sophisticated. The Cockney accent's a lot of fun. Gio Johnson said, oh, I figured out what the problem was. Malwarebyte was set to register in Windows Security Center. I turned that off and now it works fine. I never turned it on, so I don't know if that's something you switched on, but by leaving things alone and installing Malwarebytes with all the defaults, I've never had the Windows Security turn off. I have seen Windows Security turn off like after a Windows update. I've been seeing it's been flipping off for some reason without Malwarebytes installed. And I get that little exclamation point and it says, you know, do you want to turn on virus protection? And I hit turn on and it just stays on after that. So I don't know what's causing that to happen, but I've noticed that. But that's on machines with or without Malwarebytes. It does the same thing. And some update does that. Kevin Napier says, hello from Liverpool. So you got to love the Liverpool accent, right? The Beatles. Me and John are thinking of getting the band back together. Yeah, that's listening to Paul McCartney talk. Yeah. Dana Carvey does that really good. Oh, you know, I just plonk a plonk on the piano, just a little plonky. Dana Carvey does a bit where it's John Lennon and Paul McCartney talking about another artist, and he does them both really good. You know, I can't even do John. What's all this then? I can't do it. It's bad. Don't let me steal Dana Carvey's thunder. Let him do it. He's much better at it. The Jademan85 say I get bits from Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian. I mean, I get the idea, but not the details. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Linda says that's called scouse. See, there's another word I don't know. Can you run Malwarebytes and Nortons together? Well, it's not really a question of what you can do. It's a question of what you should do. And you should pick one. Personally, if you've got Malwarebytes, I don't see any reason you need Norton. There are many British accents. Yeah, there's a lot of American accents too. Okay, guys, last opportunity. Any technical questions? Otherwise, I am out of here. Steve Devine, thank you for your kind words to Linda there. That's nice of you. Okay. Well, it seems like nobody's got any more questions for me. Aoris Jeffrey, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. And A Hero, thank you. Bob Shoemaker, Ghost Shadow. Mike Bedelkowitz, Dave Murray, Peter Brooks, Thomas Robinson, Cosmo. Thanks, you guys, for joining me today and hanging out in the kitchen. Kumar Munir says, thank you so much for the stream. Hey, thanks for hanging out. Of course, Marty and Vern Mahorney and Daniel Bird and Wayne Lawrence, Ricky Elvis Rose and Larry H., Samuel Ramos, Randall Hill. Michael Martin. Thank you, guys. It's good hanging out with you. Feels good, man. All right. That's going to wrap it up for today. I'll give a quick shout out to everybody who's contributed during today's live stream, as I like to do. Give these generous folks the credit they deserve. Rudiger Luthi contributed $5. Brendan Looney, Kevin Lewis. See, I'm so used to Kevin Lavis. It's a close call there. Kevin Lewis contributed £2. He said, thanks for your vids, Carey. I learned a lot from them. Right on, Kevin. And David Bronson contributed twice there. Madi Yoel and, 3 times from David Bronson. Ramon Rodriguez, Freedom Flights, Andrew Brockington, Rusty Nail, Steve Devine, Bear Paw, Randy Reed. Again, a couple more from Madi today. Thanks again for your generosity, Madi. Gary Tatum and David Kane, Ben Stroud and Brendan Looney, Donnie Seeger and Alan Wimp, along with Tony Wallow. And the first contribution today was from Hugh Wong. So my appreciation and sincere gratitude to all of you. And Rudiger Luthi was saying that he's running Malwarebytes and Windows Defender works great with both running. Yeah, we sort of, I think we can all agree on that now. Thanks you guys again, and for all my friends in blue there for keeping it civil in the chat. And for people that are not yet blue, I hope that I will be able to turn you blue soon in the future as you just demonstrate that you're kind and considerate to other people, that you're not looking to start arguments or engage with somebody who does want to start an argument. Just be friendly and treat each other nice. And it's a wonderful community here that we're building, and it's getting bigger and bigger every day. And it's just never big enough as far as I'm concerned. Everybody's that's not a jerk is more than welcome, and I hope to turn more of you blue very soon. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. I will see you all again very, very soon. And until then, bye for now.